The words bled out of me once they started. I couldn't stop. I don't know what happened, man. We were just talking one moment, then the next. Oh, Jesus. I didn't mean for it to happen. You know, because I love you, man. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. It just happened now, and I can't take it back. Jessica's cry of surprise cut me off before I could go any further. Both me and Ian turned to the sound of her distress. We knew instantly what had happened. The backpacks with our compasses, food, water had been stolen. It knew. Don't you see it, goddammit? It knew we could identify it without a backpack, and it couldn't shape it into its skin to take the appearance of someone who stole them away from us. Now the next time it wormed its way into the group, we wouldn't be any of the wiser. Jessica and I never talked that night. Jessica never left my brother's side that night. They had unzipped their sleeping rolls together. She didn't even open up to me about her worries. I never actually kissed her. I poured my heart out to that whirling Jessica's skin while it was in my arms. I confessed my truest feelings for that entity masquerading as a person. I felt sick to my stomach. The others woke up quickly after hearing Jessica screaming. We quickly searched out of the area, hoping to find some scrap food or some indication of where our stuff had been taken to. We found nothing. It was gone. We had no food, no water, no hope. We had no way of telling them where those things were. It was hijacking into our heads and pretending to be a part of some group so it could distract us. With our compasses gone, we had no means of following the said direction and hoping back up the trail. In short, we were screwed with the capital S. Oliver demanded to know what I was doing last night. He wanted to know how I could be so careless as to fall asleep when I should have been watching over them and our gear. I lied and told him that someone had come around in the middle of the night to relieve me from my shift. I didn't even mention that there was those things impersonating Jessica. I couldn't even bear to even bother to look my brother or my girlfriends his girlfriends in the eyes at that point. Oliver started to yell, but stopped when he saw he was on the verge of tears. I didn't know if it was mercy or disgust that caused him to stop. It doesn't matter either way. We gathered the only thing that they didn't take the night was our sleeping rolls. We continued walking. The hike without water or prospect of food was unbearable. We were already exhausted, and realization that we were going to be starving and dehydration only served up to be slapped more of energy within a few hours. My mouth felt gummy and dry. While we were still under the canopy of leaves, the temperature was still high in the 80s and low 90s. It didn't take long for dehydration to set in. I kept licking my lips in an attempt to keep them moist. I could feel them beginning to crack as saliva began to dry up. As we walked, Oliver picked up his place and caught up with me. I looked over and knew without him saying another thing of those things had joined the group. He whispered, "Don't look directly at it. Just keep it from the corner of your eyes. I think it's just how it messes with your eye. It would explain why you didn't remember that guy that night, but the rest of us can't. You saw him, but the rest of us didn't. So don't get close, just to keep an eye on the corner of your eyes. It's been trailing for us for about a half an hour. I think it just wants to watch and follow us." I pretended to be cracking my neck and looking at Tagalong as the peripheral vision. It trailed behind us by a dozen feet. Its resting state, its facial features appeared stackly. I could make out its eyes and nose, but it was constantly shifting and rippling like bubbles in plastic. At this point, we were too even terrified to even bother with chasing it off. We just kept walking until it hoped that it would not try to join the group. It seemed to be content to keep the distance between us and its lines out of sight. It followed us for about 2 miles before it broke off into the trees with a shambling, awkward gait. We were too even tired to try and keep up with our shift system. We just huddled together in an attempt to convince ourselves that we were safer when we're closer together. But every time one of us gets comfortable enough to drift off, those things would start making noises. The noises started off as high-pitched yips, when the second seemed to travel for miles. As the night drew on, they grew more aggressive. I remember that one time I was drifting off, hearing the grating rasp of mine. Evan! The things weren't following us, they were learning. They were perfecting their mimicry. The thought of it disturbed me even more of the idea of any of them watching us from the dark. How long would it take them to become more human than human? What would they do once they were capable of walking amongst the people again? I drifted off to sleep, and that thought still beating me in my mind like a man trapped inside a wall. We got up on Tuesday morning and left without a word. At this point there was nothing left to say. Some of us had been awake all night without any food or water. The constant stress had been completely worn us down. We continued hiking in the same direction we had been going, with the false hope that we would come across someone. In the end, our hike looked more like a death march. My feet were covered in blisters that had ruptured and plaster on the soles of my feet and to my socks. Every step I felt like I was tearing open wounds a bit more. In an attempt to take my mind off the discomfort, I focused on my brother, who was walking in front of me. He wasn't saying much as walking as he was limping forward. He had stopped using his walking stick and dragging it behind him like a broken limb. I watched as he stepped over a rock, walking stick slipped out of his hands. He kept dragging himself forward as if nothing happened. He didn't even register it falling out of his hands. At that point I knew something was wrong. I knew that my brother wasn't my brother anymore. I quietly picked up his stick and passed it. Amy went to call out to him and ask if he was all right, but I hushed her. I was so sure those things had replaced him and was now leading us deeper into the woods. I soon realized I would only have one chance at this. In an instant, I knew what we knew. It would try and run away. It would take one as good of a swing to the back of its head. We would be able to take some of those things out. The stick had a bit of weight to it, about 5 or 6 pounds, enough to crack an open skull if swung hard enough. I began walking faster while trying to avoid the underbrush that might give away my approach. The thing wearing my brother's skin continued limping forward as I drew closer. I waited until within swinging distance, raising the stick above my head. My heart was already beating in my chest, and the palms were so sweaty that it felt like the stick to my right would slide right out of my hands. I just kept moving forward, completely unaware that I was about to do it. I whispered, "I'm sorry," before I swung the stick down and with all my strength. Ian then turned to me as he grumbled groggily, "Sorry, what?" My muscles locked and I stopped mid-swing, and the stick stopped just inches from his face. He blinked in surprise before muttering, Ivan, what's wrong?" His voice just sounded like distant and empty, like he was between a waking and a sleep state. It was then I knew the extent of his condition. He was pale and looked slightly abreezed as it blown over. He wasn't one of those stains. He was delirious from dehydration, sleep aspiration, and starvation. The walking stick fell out of my hands and it bounced onto the ground next to us. I dragged my tongue across my lips. I felt like I was licking sandpaper. I whimpered, "Jesus, Ian, I thought you were one of those things. Oh God, I'm so sorry." He didn't react to my apology. He just turned around and continued walking in the direction we were going. Amy just watched everything unfold numbling before he started following him. Oliver shook his head sadly, but he didn't look any better. His eyes were glazed and his lips were cracked and red from rubbing at them. I watched my brother shambling forward. It reminded me of one of those old voodoo movies where someone was put into a trace to work forward until they died from exhaustion. His mouth hung open, and he moved like he was being dragged along the puppet strings. I picked up the walking stick and began to follow them. I wonder how much longer he had left in them, and what one of us could do if he just fell over and stopped walking. I wonder how much any of us had left. I don't even know how long we walked, but everything melted together in a muddied Maldives at this time. I even remember losing my footing and tripping a few times, but I barely felt it. The first time I didn't even realize I was lying on the ground until Jessica stepped on me as she was passing by. There was no apology. She was far too gone to recognize what she had stepped on. I dragged myself to my feet and felt lightheaded, but continued putting one foot in front of the other. The fifth time I fell, I wondered if it would have been better just to lay down and wait to die. An extended yawn behind me from those things above my feet. It wasn't until we bumped into another sign, Little Bear Cannon, I realized how close we were to salvation. The post for Little Bear Cannon had a branching sign that had pointed to the direction of the T.E.J. Coral that was only a few miles from where we started at the Gila Cliff dwellings. If we were walked alongside Route 15, Ian was heading in the right direction, and we were almost home free. In my excitement, I began calling to the others to let them know at the end we were near. I looked around me and shouted, "Jessica, Ian, Oliver, Heather, Amy, I know we needed to." The words down my lips. As I counted the names, I realized that it wasn't over yet. The others kept moving, as if they hadn't heard me talking. The imposters shuffled alongside us for once. It was easy to identify them. I don't know whether or not they had let down their guard after seeing our conditions, but this one was obvious. She moved slowly, but the movements didn't convey the exhaustion. Everyone was sweating, and it looked like the Walking Dead, but she was going to be fine. I waited for her to get close enough to follow the trail to the others that they were going down before I raised Ian's walking stick and growled, "Turn around frickin' now, where I can see you." She turned slowly, and I felt my heart skip a beat. She then looked exactly like Jessica, except the brown tinge to her hair. She could have been her twin? I knew that it was planning before it even opened its mouth and asked, "What are you doing, Evan?" "Don't call me that," I winced. "What are you rambling about? Please move out of the way. We're almost safe from those things." "I know what you are." Heather turned around in the realization. She began speaking quickly. "I'm not one of those things. Please, Evan, you have to remember, there were 6 of us. Those things want us to think there were only 5 so they could take one of us without the others caring. Those things don't want us all. They only want the weakest one. Please, let's go before they catch." "Shut up," I snapped, raising the walking stick in my hand and brandished it at her. "Think about it, Evan. Do I move like one of those things? Do I speak one of those things? That should be enough to prove I'm human." "No. Ian's my brother. Jessica's his girlfriend." "Yes, I am your girlfriend. I sat on the lap on the car ride. Please don't kill me, Evan. I love you. Don't remember? Evan, I love you." I lowered the stick as it was in my hand as the memories bombarded me. I met her that one night when my brother forced me to go out to a club with him. Heather had been sitting at the bar all night drinking. It wasn't until she tried to stand up to me and fell into my arms that we actually talked. I remembered lazy Sundays in bed watching cheesy B sci-fi movies. I remember holding her close to me after making love and hearing her whisper sweet things, nothings to my ears. I remember our life together. I rasped, "Heather, I'm so sorry. I didn't know," she cooed. "Evan, it's not your fault." She went in to touch me, and then I sprang back to life, like I'd been bitten by a snake. And the instant I heard those words, I knocked. The stick caught her unaware of the side of her face. I felt her jaw give away as the unsudden force of my attack. She burbled through the broken teeth. "Allah!" The second strike had dented her temple as a temporal bone shattered. She kept trying to talk, but it was too late, and too much damage had been done. That door was shut to me now. I kept swinging the walking stick down on her until it splintered and snapped. I looked up from her from twitching her body and saw my brother watching me in horror. "Heather, oh my God." I spoke through the gritted teeth, reddened with them red in the rimmed eyes. "Come on, we have to go." "We can't," he kept talking, but I wanted to pass him. I didn't want to explain to him. He eventually ran ahead, invigorated with the prospect of finding a rescue on the road. I looked behind me one last time. The last thing I saw was one of those things dragging me away, Heather's corpse. It looked emaciated and half mad with his starvation. At the very moment I wasn't afraid of the whole thing. I just felt pity. Whether or not it was forced or emotion on me, I'll never know. I turned away and caught up with the others on Route 15. We were on the road for 15 more minutes before we managed to flag down a car and ambulance that was called for us. The doctor said our exposure to the elements, we combined with our starvation and dehydration, triggered the odority and visual hallucinations we experienced. It was a typical response you'd be given after hearing our half-dead ramblings about creatures, warping their flesh into memories, drive us to the brink of breath so they could prey on us when we were at our weakest. We spent a week there, while receiving treatments, recounting our horrific experiences, and subsequently psyche evaluations. Before we were released, I tried to talk to the others about it. Ian and Jessica refused to talk with me about it. I don't really know why. Oliver or Amy, that's off the table. They just want to forget it. I can't forget it. Here's the thing. I still remember Nadia asking me to help her find her lighter. I recall staying up late and talking with her by the campfire while she smoked like a chimney. I can recite Gary's terrible puns that he'd make most of everything. Lucas's determination hiking his trail while slowly succumbing to the effects of multiple sclerosis. I can even recall all pretty much the sweet things to Jessica under the glow of the moon. I could still envision that moment clear as day, even months later. I know the conversation we had word to word for it. I still remember the feeling of her skin against mine and the smell of her hair as I pressed myself against it. When I reached for that true moment of connectivity, I remember Heather pleading and begging me not to kill her, despite writing this all months later. I can see all those things clearly, sometimes late at night. I can't even remember driving up to Gila National Park with Heather sitting on my lap, playfully grinding against me and telling me how much fun our hike was going to be. Sometimes I think about that memory more than I should. So, since I can't talk to my brother or Jessica about this, I had to find some other outlet. I guess I'm all writing this for a reason. Carfres, at the end. I keep wondering if what I did was right. Did I make the right choice? I want you to read this and tell me I had no other option, and that risk of one of them escaping into the city forced my hand. I don't know what's the case. I could have walked away or tried to scare her off, but I didn't. What kind of a person can look into someone's eyes, remember all the things they said and the life they had, but what can I do or what I did? Who can even have all those memories at the end, and everything so callously? It didn't even matter now, because none of it was real, because in that moment it was me. And who can look at someone for such a love for them before you kill them? The answer to that question is simple now, but that I ask myself out loud. I just don't like the answer.